Is it your view that the objective in this case is illegitimate?
No, but it is the idea is to see if people have committed crimes. And
is it lawful to drive in Texas without having a valid driver's license?
Yes, sir, it is, and they will give you a ticket, presumably, if you don't have it.
Film festival?
Film festival? Is there like a costume show over there or something?
A what?
Costume party or what is it?
No, I just showed a film. It's like wearing different costumes going through the Border Patrol checkpoints.
So you had to
What's that?
You had to wear the costume to do the presentation or what?
Well, it was my film. I was just trying to promote it.
Travis!
All right, thank you.
And sometimes you'll have it and don't have it on you, and they'll give you a ticket, and then you have to go show up, and they'll dismiss the charge.
Well, what is the constitutional distinction?
The constitutional distinction, as I see it, Your Honor, is that these checkpoints have been here for now on 20 or 30 years. The people that live down in the valley have been going through there every time that they want to leave this country. And these driver's license things are done on a routine basis, and they're not near as likely to be oppressive. These checkpoints, as I said in the brief, they're Orwellian devices. You're down there, and you've got to go through there and let them look at you.
Mr. Bennett, if you're in your case where you rummaged for your driver's license and they were not really looking for driver's licenses, you say it's obviously unconstitutional. Suppose they'd been informed that a bank robber was to be found in that area and they're just checking cars for the suspect. Would that make it would that be permissible or impermissible?
Yes, sir. I think, as I pointed out in my brief, I think that you can put up roadblocks in the case of an emergency in an exigent situation. I think society has that power to protect itself, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Well, would it be an emergency if the crime had been committed months before, but they just had reason to believe that perhaps the suspect was in the area?
No, sir, I don't think so.
They could not do it then?
I would say that they could not put up roadblocks just on the belief that that they might sieve up some.
But they could do it on the belief they might find people without driver's licenses.
Well, they can check in the driver's license situation. The only way they have of seeing if you're driving without a driver's license is to ask you when you're driving if you've got a driver's license. But that's not the only way they can apprehend the smugglers of illegal aliens, Your Honor.
Hi. Okay. Oh.
What are you doing, sir?
I was in the film festival for Ein Berliner Nein. It's called Ein Berliner Nein. It was a film in the film festival, going through the Border Patrol checkpoints.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
Doing different outfits, huh?
Oh.
And just kind of elevating the level each time we went through.
Huh? Is it high percentage alcohol? Yeah. It's mine. That's it. I didn't even know what it is. That's her. That would be her.
It's no part of your case here, Mr. Bennett, is it, that these stops were pretextual, similar to your experience the second time you...
No, sir, it's certainly not part of my case because my man had aliens that were prosecuted and sentenced.
Well, you're, in your case, in any event, what was found was what they were reportedly looking for.
One of my points is that they could be used for other purposes.
But it's not your point that they are now being used for other purposes.
In this instance, no, sir.
Mr. Bennett, you mentioned or emphasized, as I understand your argument, the intrusion of the stop. Suppose instead of stopping your client, he'd been brought down to a speed, say, of 5 miles an hour, and the officer had detected the presence of these individuals lying on the floor of the back area. Would that be a constitutional violation?
Well, that gets into a gray area, I would say. I don't think stopping a man and taking him into custody is a gray area, but I feel like that is. And there again, it's just what the court wants to let the federal officials, how far they want to let them intrude into our lives.
Do you think we might draw a distinction between a stop and, say, a slowdown to...
I think you might, Your Honor, but...
There's a slowdown, if I understand my brother Powell's question, in your case would have eventuated ultimately in a stop and then an arrest.
Citizen held it up.
I saw you at the film festival earlier.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm curious. You go through Border Patrol checkpoints and do what?
I just do different things. I document what I'm doing. I just do different costumes each time, and I was given less and less information as I go along.
Was it funny, or was there a purpose behind it?
Well, it's funny, and also to learn,
and it also
just to kind of learn what I can do when I'm going through there. So first I start out, I just give them a passport, but I don't say anything. So I just make sure they don't hear my accent. And then next time I just wrote on a card, yes, I'm a U.S. citizen.
Slow down and just go through. But
yes, sir. Well, why not?
Point to slow down.
Why not put them in places where they are going to slow down anyway? I've run across, I believe, cases where they were doing this up in Oklahoma, where they have an expressway that they have to stop and pay a toll on, and they have Border Patrol agents sitting there watching them as they go through, and I don't think that's unconstitutional.
I'm a man. I'm a human man.
I have gone over my time. Thank the court.
Very well, Mr.
I'm a
Clement.
man. I'm a human man. A man, a human
Mr.
man. I'm a
Evans?
man, a human man. I ain't got no nuclear arms. They're pumped up with dumbbells and a little charm. That little charm is in my pants. It likes the women. It loves romance. I'm a man. I'm a human man. I'm a man. Thank you.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, these consolidated cases involve 4 separate prosecutions. In addition to the one involving Mr. Cifuentes and involving a stop at the Sevilla checkpoint in Texas, there were 3 separate cases growing out of 3 stops at the San Clemente checkpoint, which is the same checkpoint that was involved in last year's Ortiz decision. Like the Sevilla checkpoint, the San Clemente checkpoint is 60 or more air miles from the border. The San Clemente checkpoint, as you'll probably recall, is on Interstate 5 between San Diego and Los Angeles. Each of them is operated essentially around the clock, except where weather or manpower prohibits.
I sung a song for him.
badass.
And then next time, I did that a couple times, huh?
Yeah.
The next time I just didn't say anything.
Well, that's what I do when I get pulled over in secondary. And
Badass.
Then I went through went through this outfit, and I just spoke German. So I said Ich bin ein Berliner, and then he's asking me if I had a passport, and I said in German I said I don't have one, and then he goes talk to somebody, comes back, and then they let me go. Next time I go through, I tell him I come up with a song.
Italian next time.
Is that no? I came up with I was just
Or in the case of San
a song
Clemente,
for
if the
him.
traffic gets too heavy to be controlled effectively. And in each of the cases here, each of the 4 cases, illegal aliens were discovered riding in the passenger compartment of the vehicles that were stopped.
I'm a man. I'm a human man. A man, a human man. I'm a man, a human man. I ain't got no nuclear arms. They're pumped up with dumbbells and a little charm. That little charm is in my pants. It likes the women. It loves romance. I'm a man. I'm a human man. I'm a man. Thank you.
In one of the cases involved from the San Clemente checkpoint, the officers, after discovering the illegal aliens in the passenger compartment, searched the trunk of the automobile and found additional aliens. The broad issue in all 4 of these cases is whether Border Patrol officers may lawfully stop northbound vehicles at a fixed checkpoint in the border area for the limited purpose of inquiring about the citizenship and immigration status of the visible occupants in the absence of an articulated reasonable suspicion that the car is carrying aliens who may be illegally in the country.
And I just told him I'm a Yuma man. I said, I'm a man. I'm a Yuma man. I said, I ain't got no nuclear arms. They're pumped up with dumbbells and a little charm. That little charm is in my pants. It likes the women. It loves romance. And I had been invited to Berlin.
For the second, you pictorially document all that.
The Texas case and the California cases differ in two respects. First, with respect to operating procedure, the Cerrita checkpoint, as Mr. Bennett mentioned, is customarily operated by stopping for this limited inquiry almost everyone who passes, with the exception of local residents or other persons who the officer recognizes. And those persons are simply waved through. At San Clemente, by contrast, a very small proportion of the passing vehicles are actually stopped for inquiry. The figures at the time of the hearing in the Baca case, which you remember was a consolidated proceeding in the Southern District of California concerning all the checkpoints there, estimated that roughly 3% of the vehicles then were being stopped. The current figures, including the figures under the warrant that I'll mention in a moment, during the period involved here at San Clemente, indicate that the percentage was even smaller, perhaps 0.5%.
I'm a man.
At San Clemente, unlike the other checkpoints in the Border Patrol's network, the point officer, that is the officer who stands observing traffic as it approaches, does not ordinarily question the occupants of the vehicle because of the heavy traffic. When a vehicle is to be stopped for inquiry, is referred off the highway to a secondary area where other officers make the inquiries. Cerrita, like most of the checkpoints aside from San Clemente, is operated differently. The officer on the point generally makes the stop and asks any questions that he wants to ask right then and there. And the only time...
If that's what he wants. Yeah. So yeah.
Did you go in the Border Patrol checkpoint like that?
Yes.
And what did they do?
Huh?
What did they do?
They eventually just let me go. Yeah, they liked it. They thought it was funny.
Did they put you into the secondary?
No, I keep on trying to do something, but they haven't put me in secondary yet. I keep on, like I say, raising my level. This last time I went through, it's not in the film, but I just left my windows up, and I covered my son with a sheet, and I put a wig on his head and told him not to say anything. I like bribed him with an iPod. I told him I'd give him an iPod if he goes through, doesn't say anything. And so we went through and left the windows up, and I had seen one film where the Border Patrol, or not the Border Patrol, but the DPS had broken into some guy's car.
Oh, yeah.
And tased him and stuff. So I had actually stolen a hammer just like that from Germany. So I brought that with me. When he asked me he told me to put the windows down, I put some lipstick on and kissed the window. And then he tells me to put the window down again, and I hold the hammer up, let him know I'll break the window open if that's what he wants.
Over to the side of the highways if suspicious circumstances warrant further.
This looks kind of suspicious, so this will give them a probable cause to put us in the secondary, I think, for an extra inspection.
Further inquiry. The other difference, aside from operating procedure, is that the stops at San Clemente were authorized by a warrant issued by a federal magistrate upon a showing of area-type probable cause. There is no warrant for the stops at the Cerrita checkpoint. In our view, these differences between the two checkpoints should not produce different results, but they do account for somewhat different arguments addressed to the two checkpoints. The analytical framework for these cases, we think, is drawn from this court's decision last term in Brignone-Ponce, which also involved Border Patrol stops for inquiry, but which involved stops on roving patrol. I think it's fair to say that all the parties agree that a checkpoint stop and inquiry procedure is, although a seizure under the Fourth Amendment, something like a street encounter involving a brief detention short of traditional arrest, and that is therefore to be tested under the general reasonableness requirement of the Fourth Amendment. I think it's also fair to say that the parties agree that reasonableness, the test of reasonableness, depends upon a balance between the law enforcement need to conduct the particular activity on the one hand, and the nature and the scope of the intrusion on the other hand. The court in Brignone-Ponce concluded on the basis of precisely such a balance that it was not reasonable to conduct roving patrol stops in the absence of articulable suspicion, focused on the particular vehicle to be stopped. And the real question here, again, I think everyone agrees, is whether the analysis in Brignone-Ponce leads to a different result in this case.
Last term in those two cases, Brignone-Ponce and what was the other, Ortiz? Or one involved retroactivity, Ortiz, I think. It was settled that there could not be a stop even for interrogation by a roving patrol, except upon reasonable suspicion.
That's correct.
It was further settled that there could not be a stop and search at a fixed checkpoint. Is that correct?
That's without probable cause or consent.
Without the ordinary probable cause
Yes.
for a search or consent. So this is the sole remaining issue.
That's right. Originally there were four elements to the Border Patrol's traffic checking operations, all of which grew out of the statute which authorized them to make stops and searches within 100 miles of the border looking for aliens.
And now after Almeida Sanchez, Ortiz, and Brignone-Ponce, this
is what's left, and it is, we think, at once the single most important aspect of the traffic checking program, and also by far the least intrusive aspect. In our view, the court's analysis leads to a different result.
Okay, they let us through. I kissed the window for him, put some lipstick on. Huh? Yeah, you can talk now.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
Can I unbutton myself and take this off?
When we stop.
Result in this case, because, as I just indicated, I think the stops involved in a checkpoint stop and inquiry procedure is substantially less intrusive and substantially more essential to the effective control of illegal immigration. As we read the decision in Brignone-Ponce, the decision turned essentially on two controlling considerations. First, the court perceived that the roving patrol authorities sought would permit Border Patrol officers to engage in unlimited stops anywhere within a 100-mile zone, anywhere within a zone of 100 miles from the Mexican border, which itself is 2,000 miles long, day or night on city streets, desert roads, busy highways. Every motorist anywhere within the zone would be potentially subject to limitless interference. Second, the court concluded that the nature of the illegal alien traffic was such that it tends to generate articulable grounds for identifying violators, and that a requirement of reasonable suspicion for roving patrol.
So
this is like politically motivated, like you're making a point.
Not really for me, but for other people. Yeah, I'm just kind of learning. For me, it's more for learning, but it's kind of empowering, and I'm learning stuff as I go along. And like I said, right now I'm just going to leave my windows up from now on, and we'll see what happens. So and I've got some other ideas and stuff that I'm going to do as I go along here. So.
Stops would allow the government an adequate opportunity to carry out its objective of protecting the public interest. The court, in short, so stated, was not convinced that the legitimate needs of law enforcement required the degree of interference with lawful traffic that it believed would be occasioned by the authority that sought in Brignone-Ponce. Well, neither of these considerations is applicable here. The authority sought for checkpoint officers would give them no roving mandate to move about this zone of 100 miles from the border, to stop any car that they happen to see. Strategically, each of the checkpoints is located at, first of all, it's a fixed location. It's not ordinarily mobile. Some of them do move from one to another location, but on essentially the same road, and there's no roving aspect to it. The officer has no discretion on his own to decide where cars to be stopped or how to. There's no authority to pursue a car except one that goes through a checkpoint without stopping. There's no interference here with city traffic. There's very little interference with commuter traffic. Each of these checkpoints is placed strategically at almost by a self-limiting process in a place where the least amount of interference with lawful traffic would be required in order to check what the Border Patrol considers to be an essential route to ensure that try to ensure that none of the passing cars contain aliens who don't belong in the country.
Mr. Evans, who determines the location of the checkpoints?
By and large, they're determined by relatively high-level Border Patrol officials in the field. There are 9 sectors that the Border Patrol has in the southwest area, and ordinarily the chief patrol agent of the sector will determine the location of the checkpoint. If it's a major checkpoint, it's not established without consultation with higher officials, either in Washington or in the regional office.
Did you say how long the San Clemente checkpoint has been in operation?
I believe it's been in operation for at least 35 year. It wasn't always exactly where it is.
In 1980, had got an invitation.
Interesting. Well, good luck with everything.
All right, thanks.
I do the same thing, but without the suit.
Without the what?
Without the suit, yeah.
Okay.
That'll help you out.
Like I said, yeah, I went through with like a hippie suit, hippie outfit there once, huh?
What does the suit stand for?
This is the Ein Berliner 9. It's like Kennedy gave a speech in 1963. He went to Berlin, and they were surrounded by a wall, and said he kind of identified with the citizens of Berlin. And my film was just kind of identifying with the citizens of Yuma. As they came here, we're kind of surrounded by the Border Patrol. You can't get out of here without going through a Border Patrol checkpoint. So I just said I was just kind of like Yuma is kind of the crotch of the United States of America.
Yes.
And you know, with the Arizona on one leg and California is the other leg, and the Colorado River going through it. So that was in I think in 1980 had got an
point. It was further south, but it's been in its present location for somewhat shorter time. But there's always, in effect, been a checkpoint at that location since around 1940.
Well, take this one in Texas. If you've got the checkpoint, why let the people go around it?
On other roads?
Yeah.
Well, because other roads are covered as well. At least that's the aim of the Border Patrol. By checkpoints. By the checkpoints. The aim is to cover, and this is one of the 3 major roads leading out of the border in that area.
Here, the one that we were talking about, the Texas one, was a checkpoint on each one of those 3 roads, and there were only 3 roads out.
Well, there are essentially 3 roads out, and there are checkpoints.
On each one of the 3.
The same is true, I should add, of the California area.
What the fuck is this?
It's all staged.
We're searching for weapons.
San Clemente checkpoint is on the major interstate highway, but there are also checkpoints on the routes that might be used to avoid the San Clemente checkpoint. In short, on this question of the scope of the discretion given the officers to initiate encounters, the degree of the potential interference with lawful traffic that would be occasioned by permitting these stops at checkpoints is substantially reduced over that the court thought would be involved in roving patrol situation. It's true that the officer would retain discretion at the checkpoint, particularly at checkpoints where the traffic is heavy, as at San Clemente, to select certain cars for an inquiry. But there's no discretion, as there was in Ortiz, to select cars for search randomly. Of course, a car could be searched if a probable cause developed, but there's no authority claimed here to make that kind of invasion. There is, in effect, no substantial invasion of privacy, which is what the court referred to in Ortiz as being involved in the search of a vehicle's trunk. Brignoni recognized that the intrusion occasioned by a stop and inquiry is minimal, it's modest. What was significant in Brignoni was the extent of the potential interference with lawful traffic, not the nature of the intrusion, which is...
Well, that says... I'm a Berliner. I'm from Berlin. Yeah, he's got. I don't know what Yuma is. Well, it says I'm a Berliner.
I'm Berliner.
Berliner. I don't know what Yuma.
Which, if not trivial, is certainly very limited. Moreover, I should mention, although I don't know that it's necessarily controlling, but it adds to the nature of the kind of interference that's involved, that I think most people would feel somewhat less frightened or less concerned about stopping at a regular checkpoint where there are floodlights, it's lit, it's usually on a fairly large highway, there are other people traveling through. There's no one's being pulled over the side of the road by a flashing red light from behind with a siren. And to a certain extent, I think that minimizes what might otherwise be viewed to some people as an offensive aspect of the operation. But even more important in our view is not the intrusiveness, which we think, and I think is incontestable, is relatively slight. But the controlling consideration in our view is that the checkpoint officer, unlike a roving patrol officer, simply is seldom in a position, because of the nature of the operation, to observe a vehicle for a long enough period or close enough before a stop to see suspicious signs suggesting illegal activity. A roving patrol officer can follow a vehicle for as long as he believes necessary in order to determine whether to make a stop on the basis of articulated suspicion. But a checkpoint officer has only a brief second or two to look at an oncoming car, and the decision simply cannot, in most instances, be made that there is something suspicious about the car. And I should mention, I think it's quite significant that our California respondents concede this in their brief. They say that in the 1 second or two available to an officer, it's not likely that he'll be able to find anything about a car that would rise to the level of reasonable suspicion. Now, at most of these checkpoints, as I've mentioned, the stops are made of everybody. At San Clemente, there is a very strong effort to avoid interference with the many thousands of cars that pass through the checkpoint, and the effort is made there to select out those that seem to be somehow worthy of further inquiry.
This highway is the main highway between San Diego and Los Angeles.
I'm a
That's correct.
A man, a you man. I'm a man, a you man. I ain't got no nuclear arms. They're pumped up with dumbbells and a little charm. That little charm is in my pants. It likes the women. It loves romance. I'm a man. I'm a you man. I'm a man. Thank you.
The biggest cities in California.
That's right.
How, what is it, about midway?
It's about
between
midway,
the two cities?
and the Baca court found that it was at the point of
Was ist los mit der Bundespost?
lowest traffic volume between anywhere.
Gut.
Good? U.S. citizen?
Ich bin ein Berliner. Nein.
I can't hear you.
Ich bin ein Berliner. Nein.
So, you have a passport?
Ich hab kein.
Can you please state your country's citizenship?
Ich bin ein Berliner. Nein.
Do you have a passport?
Ich habe kein.
Where were you born?
Ich bin ein Berliner. Nein.
You have a great day, sir.
Danke.